Welcome to the third Grammar Punk instructional video called The Primer. Now, if you've purchased the Grammar Punk curriculum, you know about the primer and you know the value of the primer. However, there are many out there who don't know what the primer is, and I want to explain this because I'm an English teacher. I've been teaching for 12 years. It's now 2009, and the things that we've created with this are so valuable in my classroom. Let me explain what they are. The primer is a 10-page packet that's meant to be Xeroxed, copied over and over, and every one of your students gets the primer. When you give the primer to the students, have them look through it first. Just as a good reading strategy, just say, hey, look at this, tell me what you see. What they will see is, they will see basic rules for the colon, the semicolon, the comma, parentheses, quotation marks, question marks, and parentheses. I think I said that maybe. But there are 6. It's the 6 that are on the orange Grammar Punk dice. The last page of the primer is dedicated to the 8 parts of speech. Now, remember that I said earlier in the dice instructional video that the parts of speech on our yellow die only have 6. We don't cover noun and verb because that's kind of understood that they're in every sentence. But in the primer, we do address abstract and concrete nouns and verbs. So they are in here. This is how the primer is used. It's quite easy. Once you've given each student a primer, you also hook them up with, or they hook themselves up with, a scratch piece of paper. They get the piece of paper, scratch paper, and the primer, and they put it on their desk. And this is the instructions that you give to all students. Students, we're going to do 3 sentences a day. We're going to learn 3 rules today. Everything you write must go on the scratch paper. If it's perfect on the scratch paper, it ends up in the primer, because only perfect sentences go into the primer. So, they all have these on their desk, and then we have the students roll the dice. Let me give you an example of what they will roll. I wouldn't roll anything more than the boof. Hopefully you've seen the boof video, which is right before this one, instructional video number 2. That is, just correctly write a sentence that fulfills a punctuation rule, but it has unique words because of the boof. But sometimes I like to throw in one extra die. I will throw in either the parts of speech die, the yellow die, or the green topic die, because it gives a little bit more of a challenge. Let me give you an example on that. If you have a primer, or even if you don't, let me explain. Let's just do one of the exercises. I'll go to page 3, and this is commas. The first rule for the comma says this, and if you're an English teacher, you're very familiar with this rule. Use a comma between 2 independent clauses that are joined by a conjunction. Now, let me show you how I articulate that with students. If a student's in class, I'll say, hey, go to page 3 and read that rule, and a student will read it just as I wrote it. Commas are used between 2 independent clauses. That means I have a sentence, and I have a comma, and then I have a conjunction, and another sentence. Independent clause, independent clause. That's one of the rules for the comma. So I will often say, once they've read that definition to the class, I'll say, hey, let's write a sentence, but use our Grammar Punk dice. And we will roll the boof, the basic unit of fun, which brings in funny words, and then we'll roll a part of speech. So let's do that right now and see what comes up, okay? This is what I got. ER3 adverb. Now, when I automatically say adverb to the class, about 5 kids are going to know what an adverb is. About 20 of them aren't going to know what it is. And the other 5 or 20, depending on how big your class sizes are going to be thinking about their cell phone and their girlfriend or the boyfriend or whatever. So it doesn't really matter. The reason we have in the primer the last page is because in here they can look up the definition of an adverb, and there's a list of adverbs. Adverbs typically end with ly, but students can go at their own pace. All they know is they're going to write a sentence that fulfills this rule. 3 of the words are going to have R and E in it, and somewhere in the sentence there is going to be an adverb. So they'll look in the back, maybe they'll use a really simple one, a commonly used one is quickly, okay? So I'm going to write a sentence that does this, and I often will do it. The value of Grammar Punk is teachers must be willing to write their sentences with or before their class so that they can help them out, okay? So let's try this. The retired general quickly wrecked the Jeep, comma, but it didn't get him out of his duties. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I played Grammar Punk so much that I did write that off the top of my head, and often it doesn't come that quickly. But let's see how well I did. Do 3 of the words have R and E? That has R and E. That has E and R. Wreck, that has R and E. And remember, the letters don't need to be next to each other in the word. As long as the word has it in there, the 2 letters, it counts. Do I have an adverb? Yep, I have the word quickly. But the key right here is, do I have two independent clauses joined by a conjunction with a comma before the conjunction? The retired general quickly wrecked the Jeep. That's a sentence. Here's the next sentence. It didn't get him out of his duties. That's another sentence. And instead of putting a capitalized letter there, I took off the capitalization, put a conjunction here, and put a comma right before it. So it does fulfill the DICE requirements, and it fulfills the rule on page 3, rule number 1. Now, that's how we systematically go throughout the primer. As you walk around the room, some students won't be doing it, and they may want to make a word list, like we did in the boof video. You may want to say, hey, let's think of some words that have E and R, and they'll say red, and you'll say good, endure, good. Just get a word list first, and then we start generating sentences. This is a very, very good exercise because GrammarPunk, the value of GrammarPunk is these students are learning punctuation rules in the context of their understanding. I wrote about a general in a Jeep. The kid over here is going to write about skateboarding. The girl over there is going to write about teddy bears or whatever. As long as they are learning in the context of their understanding and they're writing it, they will remember it according to the research. Now, that's how you use the primer. And you'll want to watch the next video which shows how to use all the DICE together. It's a really quick one. Thanks.